Okay, good evening, everybody. Tonight we'll be starting the Gemara Chaf Amud Beis on the bottom. V'hamasreit Srita Achas. That was the mission was listed as one of the one of them that gets Makkos, somebody who scratches himself. We'll see the Gemara discussing different ideas and different how he does it and on who he does it and etc. So the Gemara Tana Rabbanan V'saret. It says in the pasuk V'saret Yochav V'saret Al Beis Seven Shenafal V'Asvina Shetav V'Yam. I think that even if he is mastered, if he again, this whole thing is about he scratched himself in anguish, and that's the isser. But it's isser of anguish or out of pain on a dead person. Let's say he loses a lot of money in the stock market. Then what happens if he scratches himself? He makes a tear in his body because of that. Is he chayev? The Gemara says no. Tamalam nefesh. Well, let's finish with Yom Tamalam nefesh has to be v'sarat benefesh. What's the pasuk? V'sarat benefesh lo'isitim b'b'sarchem. So it says lenefesh has to be after for that person. Only if it's done because someone died, then you chayev. How do you know if someone does 5 separate stritas for one dead person, then you're chayev for 5 lavim? This said, the chayev called strita. It says viseret. It doesn't have to. It's not being moisiv. I guess it's not coming off of the previous pasuk. It's not coming to be. It's not coming. It's not a vav moisiv. It's moisiv on its own. Each seret is another iser. Basically, I mean, the misari. Shesrita achas hachamish meisim shu chayav kol achas achas. Tamlam lenefesh. The chayav kol nefesh nefesh. That Rabbi uses this word lenefesh to say that on each person that he's mastered, he's a chayav alav. So if someone loses five kreidim or 5, if he hears about 5 people that die and he's mastered one srita on those 5 people, he's chayav on each one. For the Gemara, the basis we just used it 2 minutes ago to tell me that it's only on a dead person and not on a loss of money. The Gemara, so Rabbi says we need the achasi. Ravesi says, I don't need Lanefesh to tell me about a mace because he learns that we had 2 different psukim. We learned this yesterday also. Yesterday it says, Lo yikarchu karcha b'roisham u'pasikanim lo yigalechu b'sam lo yisrutu surates. No, that's not the pasuk. I'm sorry. So over there it says loisis gaidu, and that's talking about a mace for ferish in the pasuk. Loisis gaidu really means with a keli. So the difference would be if someone takes a pocket knife and makes a tear in his arm, that's technically what he's going to do, and Srita is with his fingernails. And Rabbi Yossi holds that it's one and the same. It's not 2 separate isurim. So therefore, I don't need a pasuk to tell me that Srita is talking about a mace if Lois is talking about a mace already. How much more? The Gemara right mastered the kli chayiv. If someone's mastered the kli, he's chayiv twice. That's what Ivan says. Chayiv over here doesn't mean it's chayiv stam because that wouldn't be such a chiddush. It's chayiv twice. Meisvei srita gudida achasi. Srita gudida is the same idea. In other words, a similar concept. Ella srita biyad gudida b'kli. So you see, the Gemara says that there's a distinction where if you do srita, it's biyad gudida b'kli. So how could Shmuel say that if you master the kli, which is not really doesn't really make any sense? A master is not with a kli. So why would you mechayiv twice? It should be. No, there's 2 separate lavim. The Gemara is bringing it right from this memra. This question of Meisvei is that we have a brisa that srita is one thing which is done by hand, and gedida is another thing that's done by kli. So Shmuel's halacha is contradictory to that brisa. He says like we just said. Yossi says it's mamish the same thing, even though it's technically 2 different mashmois. In other words, the lashon of gedida is mashma more with the kli, or sorry, is mashma more with the hands. But essentially, they're one and the same lab. Not only one and the same idea, like the brisa also says, they're one and the same lab, and therefore, according to Shmuel, so each ma'aseh that a person does is over 2 lab because it's 2 lab to say that you shouldn't be sorry. So whether you do a person does a srita with his hands or with a keli, a person's chayav too because it's 2 lab talking about the same exact Ma'aser. Someone who does, someone who's mastered, someone who hurts himself because of a mace, But if someone does it in order to serve avodas chachavim, someone does it for avodah zarah, biyad chayav, but kli pater. If he does it by hand, it is chayav. But he does it by kli, it's pater because that's not the derech of avodah. And we by avodah zarah again, we're not pater is usually our aser. So we're not handling whether it's a good idea or not. We're handling whether you would chayav malchus or chayav misa in the case of avodah zarah. We have a passage that says lahapach from what you just said. Again, the brisa we just said, it says that biyad is chayav by avodah and bekeli is pater by avodah. But when Eliyahu Navi is yelling at the idol, giving them muster, it says he's yelling at them, and you're being misguided yourselves like they do it with charaves, with swords and with spears or some other weapon. But the idea is you see that using a keli. So that's not what we just said. We just said that with a keli you pater, and that's exactly what Eliyahu Navi is saying that they did. That's wrong. The way of doing avodah zarah is with a keli. Again, biyad might be aser midaraban or aser stam. It might, the word handling pater does not mean it's a good idea. Pater could mean that it's aser, but there's no chayiv chatos or chayiv skil or chayiv malchus. So this is talking about the payas. Machve Rav Sheshes ben Pirkavesh, Rav Sheshes showed in his temples, the side of his head. V'az the Kanstein mekan v'azokenstein mekan v'achas v'lamata. Machve Rav Sheshes ben Pirkei dezikna. He showed the corners of his face, the corner of his beard. Rav Lezer in Natlan, Rav Lezer says if you take them both at the same time, you chay only once. He holds that it's one iser. And again, if you do it as two separate parts, then you chayav twice. If you do it together, then you only chayav once. So we have two psukim over here. We have a pasuk kanam. So maybe if I just take it off with scissors, it's still a problem. Now, Leisashchis is talking about is talking about a beard. But we make a gzeir shava. The Rivan explains from pass that pass the kanam and pass. No, I'm sorry. Lo yikarchu karchu b'vashim pass the kanam. Lo it's both talking about the kanam over here. No, I'm sorry. No, they're both talking about the kanam. So we say that we make a gzeir shava that the pass. The kanam lo yigalechu and leishashkas pass the kanam has to be the Gemara is going to dashen. Is going to bring from one to the other. Again, I should not shave my beard. I should not cut my beard. Maybe if I just took it off with scissors, I would be over this lav. It has to be hashchasa. That's the pasuk says later. Because it says later, Eli Sashas, if I just had the pasuk Sashas, Yachal in Laktu b'malkei v'rehiti yechayev. If I would have taken off with these wood carpentry tools, then it would also be chayev. So it says it has to be a gilach, it has to be a shaving, a shearing. Okay, tzad giluch sheish by hashchasa. How is it possible to have a giluch that is a hashchasa? So we said that's a tar. A tar is a shaving tool that also destroys. So he says that these carpentering tools you are chayiv. So if he holds in the gezeira shava, then he should need a tar like a Tanakama. Rabbi Lezer, I'm sorry, not that. Rabbi Lezer that says that you need a tar. If he doesn't hold the gezeira shava, then he should be. Then why you have to say only? Why does he say only malaket beriti? Say even a pair of scissors you should be able to. You should be chayav because it says lo yigalechu. But anymore, he holds the gezeira shava, but he holds that this the malaket beriti is is considered giluach also, and hashchasa we know it does. So he holds it's aser and Ivan Makkos even with these carpentry tools. Look at the mission right there. Someone who does a tattoo, so then he's chayav, right? So if he writes on his hand, but he doesn't etch it in, he doesn't use a needle to go into his skin, or kakav v'loy kasav, or he just uses a needle and he scuffs up his skin, but he doesn't write it, he doesn't add ink to it. And I'm sorry, it has to be that he's not chayav until he writes it and he does this, the etching the needle into his skin. It has to be b'diyayu b'kachol b'chol davar shehu reishim. It has to actually leave a reishim. If someone does something that doesn't leave a reishim, the Gemara discussed already, and halachically how to deal with a henna tattoo and how to deal with the temporary tattoos and that whole Indian. Rishon ben Yehuda in the chayv hashichtav sham as Hashem. He has to write the name, which means we're going to see exactly what it means. So the Gemara is going to explain exactly what Rabbi Yehuda, Rishon ben Yehuda shita is. He wanted to explain the shita of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda that he's writing the words Ani Hashem. That's how he understood the part, because he said so it must be that he's talking about Hashem, but he said that they have to write the words Mamish Ani Hashem. Amalei light. That's not what he meant. Because the Tani bar kapara ein echayv at sheyichtav shem avodas chacham. Shnema uksav eskaka lo yisit b'chem ani Hashem lo achar. It has to be a ksiva that is soiser, or that is violating this idea against Ani Hashem. It has to be going against Ani Hashem. So Hashem said, "I'm your God, and you're going to write a name of another Avodah Zarah on there." That's already the problem of uksav eskaka. But stam to write. Just time to write, I don't know, whatever other mishigasim you have. I had a shtickle typo once to get a tattoo of L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh on my bike, but I was Baruch Hashem, I was misgaber on the typo. That was my big yitara. But that's what we come out. Rabbi Yehuda Shimon is saying that you have to write a name of a Zara, and that would be in direct violation of the idea, or direct going against the idea. I'm trying to think of the right word, but that would be going against this idea of Ani Hashem by putting another Avodah on your name. Now this is the Isser of Malchus. This is talking about getting chapping Malchus, but everyone holds that it's also stam to write a tattoo anyway. The question is, the Gabi Malchus, would you get Malchus? Okay, so there, right? Amar Rav Milkiya. Somebody had a wound. Some of the home remedies that they had back in the day was to put ashes on the wound. And the reason, and he says you're not allowed to do that. Why? It looks like you're going to get that too, because you put. Now we see over here again. It doesn't mean that he goes like that, but even not wording, it's just a packing some dirt on the wound would not be allowed. I guess the ashes stayed longer than just regular dirt. So that it would be a problem. So now once we quoted Rav Milkiya, we're gonna have a few lines discussing Rav Milkiya's other halachas. Amar Rav Nachman b'rei davika shafud shafachais v'gumais Rav Milkiya, which is not Rav Milkiya. Which three halachas is this? Shafud is the fact we're having now coming Pesach, they would roast the coming Pesach on a spit. Now you could do that on Yom Tov anyway. It doesn't have to be Pesach, but it was every Pesach everyone had a bunch of these spits, because everyone had to do the Korban Pesach dafka on a spit. So the spit, if you roast on Yom Tov, which is allowed, but the spit now becomes muktzah, because muktzah machos mios. That's the Gemara over there. So he says that halacha. Shvachis is the Gemara in Ksubis. I forgot what the shvut is, but in Ksubis it's a Mishnah that says that even if a woman brings in 100 shvachais, she still has to do some basic things around the house so that she doesn't become crazy, or she doesn't run to titus. But Gumais is saying that the shear of shtei saris is not. It doesn't mean to make someone a katan, or to make someone a gadol or gedayla. Bagaris doesn't have to be shtei saris mamish. It has to be, you see the pores coming up, that if they're ready for here, that's enough already to make them a gadol. This from Milky Yoy. The Lyris, this idea, the Lyris was, I think they used to keep a ponytail for Avodah Zarah, and if a Jew was giving a non-Jew who was served with Avodah Zarah a haircut, and he said he wanted him to keep the hair, he had to leave 3 finger breadths of space around that makom, so it shouldn't be that he's helping the guy serve Avodah Zarah. So Beloiris, Afer, Milka, which you just had, Ugavina, and the fact that we cannot use Gavinas Akam, and the reason for that was not Chalav Akam like we have today. Maybe it's going to be Chazer. I think it's more, there was a real problem that they would cover in order, I guess, to maybe either for taste or for pasteurization, they would coat the cheese in Chazer, literal Chazer fat. So it was mamish a problem. That's Ramilkia. That's our Ramilkia that we just had. Papa Amar, he argues on Rav Nachman. And he says, Masnisa, Rav Milkia, the cases that are referring to Mishnayis is Rav Milkia, Shmaitza, Rav Milkia, and the Shmaitza, the ones that are on Amoraim, that's Rav Milkia. V'simarach Masnisa Makasa. And to remember that the Mishnah is king, and it's referring to Malkiah is king. My benaya, what's the nafkamina between these two ways of learning the different which cases were Malkiah or which were Malkiah? In other words, he attributed these three, and he attributed all Mishnayos and members. He says Shvachis goes to Rav Milkia. Rabbi Abaye kapid afilu aribta de kusilta. Rabbi Abid said that even a tiny little pinprick of a makkah, if you put ash on it, he would makkah that. Ashi Amar kol sheishal makkah makas mechiach. Looks like this is how he passed him. There's a base over here. It looks like that's how he passed him. So if someone has a wound and they want to put ashes on it, if you're not, you have to be samachan. But that he says, as long as you have a makkah, people are going to realize that what you're doing is for the makkah and not for the ksevis kakas. Okay, we're going to mention right. Nazir shaya shaisa yain kol yam in chay velachas. So a nazir drinks wine. Again, nazir is aser to drink wine, be matam to mason, and shave their heads. The beards also maybe, but zecher the heads. So we're going to go through all these examples. Why the Mishnah needs to break it down? I'm not 100% sure, but you'll see in a second. If he wakes up in the morning, they say, don't drink wine today. And he drinks the whole day, then he has to bring, then he's chayav for each drinking. He's chayav Makkos. He's over. Now, but here, so that he went out and he went back in. Because if he stays in, he doesn't. That's not that it's not a problem. He's a chiyuv to leave, but he doesn't get another set of Makkos for every 20 minutes that he stays there. Same thing over here. If he shaves one time, or keeps on shaving every time they tell him don't shave, he's chayav each one. How you lavish b'klayim? It's not talking about a nazir anymore because everyone's not allowed to wear klayim. How you lavish b'klayim called yom and chayav alachas. Amru lo al tilbash who places the lavish and he gets unjust and he puts it back on chayav alachas v'achas. Same thing. He's chayav on each one. Again, this is all ideas. If you're going to keep on getting worn and still put yourself in that isser, you chayav again. Chayish. Now this is a little bit of a random left turn, but chayrish tell him you could be chayrish, you could plow one row. V'chayiv olav mishum shmayna lavin. You have 8 lavin. The Gemara going to add a few more later, but you have 8 lavin. Chayrish. So what's the example? How are we going to figure this out? 8 lavin here. Chayrish b'shar chamar. So you have b'shar chamar that's klayim. You can't plow 2 different animals. Vein mukdashim and the hekdesh. So that's aser. Klayim, Karim, and you're plowing Klayim, so that's also Uba Shvius and on Shvius, so far up to 4. The Yomtiv and a Yomtiv, the Kayin, and the guy's a Kayin and a Nazir. That's 6 and 7. The base of Toma. We got to 7. How do we get to 8? Let's do this again. We said 8, right? So we have Acharish b'Shar b'Chamar. Oh, you get 2 Laban, one for the Shar, one for the Chamar. Maybe that's hold on. Acharish b'Shar b'Chamar. Let's say it's 1. Vehim Udashin and they're hektish, it's 2. B'Klayim Mekarim, and you have 3 is Klayim, Shvius, and Shemitah. Yomtiv is Yomtiv, B'Klayim V'Nazir, B'Beis Tuma. That's 7. So the Chayra, you would either the Shar Chamar. I wonder if you're Chayv for each one, or Mekdashim you're Chayv for each one. The Mekdashim you're Chayv for each one. That's the Chayr what it is. Okay, I didn't count it before. I just assumed the Gemara was right, but my father always told me never trust the Mishnayos. Never trust the Gemara. Okay, I think that each time for each animal you chayiv hektish. The Mishnah continues. Hananya ben Chakinai Amar Af Halevish Klayim. You could also be wearing Klayim, and if you're wearing Klayim while you're plowing, then you're also having another lav. Amrulai, Aina Hashem, this is not the point because that's not what we're really dealing with. We're not dealing with it. That's not a Maisa plan. You could also be saying Al Shahara. That's not it's not the clothing isn't with the plan. The Gemara, so he answers back, the fact that he's a Nazir or a Kain is also irrelevant. So what like I guess so whatever, the Gemara kind of like a stalemate over here. We'll see, the Gemara's gonna add a few more lavim. It's going to be Labadik. Amar Rav Bibi, Amar Rav Yaisi, Paisha v'Leivish v'Leivish v'Mamish. V'Yafilu Makkos Daf Beis Yad Unkali Shalai. Does he have to mamish take off? Let's say he's saying, let's say he says this sweater is climbing. You have to take it off completely, then put it back on. Or if he just takes out his hand and then puts it back in, then it's still considered getting back dressed. So Rav Achabar Brei Davika, like he minded that he was like he was slipping out of his shirt. So it showed that even if he just slips out of his shirt a little bit and he puts it back in, then it's a problem. He's learning the Mishnah. I think he's learning in the Mishnah that even if I just wait enough time that I could have taken off my clothing and went back and put it back on, and I didn't take it off, then I'm chayiv. Yesh chayiv talam amar Yana b'chabura nimnu v'gamru ha'chayfa b'klayim loika. Somebody who just covers up dirt, who takes dirt and covers up seeds that are klayim, they are like amar Lahan Yechanan. It's our Mishnah. Yesh chayiv talam achad b'chayiv. It's our Mishnah. You're not adding anything. We learned already a Mishnah. Yesh chayiv talam achad b'chayiv olav mishum shmein alav chayiv basur v'chamar v'hem gudashim v'klayim mekar. Chaim Karam is one of them. So what does he do? He's plowing it. It doesn't say that he seeded it. He plowed it. So obviously plowing it is also a zereya. And the Gemara, it must be that he's being mechasi the dirt while he's going. Maganisa Tusa. In other words, I didn't say anything very profound, but if I would not have told you this halacha, you would not have necessarily read it into the Mishnah. Because you could have said that the Mishnah was talking about something else. What would they say? What do they want to say that it's talking about? Oh, that it's in Rabbi Kiva. Oh, the Gemara is going to say later. But that it's Rabbi Kiva that says that even maintaining a climb is asar. So you would do something that's more maintaining, not that it's covering over the Amr Shakish. Rabbi Yechanan, he loved the Kaslach Gava Rabba. If not for Rabbi Yana, I have Amina Masista Mani Rabbi Kiva. But that's what Mar said. Now I think it's Rabbi Kiva. Amar Hamakayim Kaim like it. My Rabbi Kiva. Which Rabbi Kiva is this? Netanya Haminakesh Vamachaber B'Klaim like. If somebody pulls out the weeds or covers up the seeds of, just puts dirt on top of the climb, he's like he gets Rabbi Kiva. Even someone who doesn't do anything and just walks by. It says Machlekes because we see Rabbi Kiva in other places, probably at Ar Masechta somewhere. We have to go back, but holds that Lasha Ein B'Maisa Ein Eloika. So for him to say that a Mekayim in this Mishnah is just walking past, in other words, just riding by on a donkey and not pulling out the climb, to say that that's Aser, if you get Malkus, again, Isser is different, but to get Malkus would be a Chiddush. But again, the Rishonim deal with this. But either way, it's on Mekayim. It could be that he's doing something else, or it could be that he was just passing by and he didn't uproot it. My time, the Kiva, the Tanya, we say like this. The pasuk says, "Sotchaloi sizra klayim." It says in the pasuk, "Sotchaloi says you should not plant klayim." Ainly the zerei Mekayim and I. How do I know Mekayim? Right? It says don't plant. So I didn't plant. I just saw it. It happened. I didn't do anything about it. That's why it's not a violation of that pasuk. So Talmud Leimer, another pasuk. Actually, it might be in the same one. Yeah, it is the same one. So hold on. It says it's don't breed your animals. Don't interbreed your animals. Right? Don't crossbreed your animals. Thank you. That's the word. So the pasuk reads Klayim, and then Klayim. But you could read it Klayim. You could read it that's a reading of the pasuk. Simple. That's it. Beged Klayim. Sham is late. That's 3 times it says Klayim in the pasuk. 3 separate lavim, behemoth, field, and clothing. But you could read it that you could bleed from the behemoth into the field, and if it says Klayim Sadchalai, you shouldn't have any Klayim. In other words, having Klayim in your thing, just if it happens by mistake, or if a guy does it, or a monkey does it, whatever. That's already a violation of that drush of Klayim Sadchalai. So that's how we learned it. So that's a violation of Klaim Satchalai that teaches you that you cannot have. Now it could be that again. It could be that that's where Akiva has a special drush that Lav Shem B'Maisa Enachram he holds across Shas does not get Malchus. But over here I have a special drush that you would get Malchus. You're violating this pasuk. Again, it could be. I didn't see the Rishonim, but just maybe that's how it works. Amar Le'ula Rav Nachman V'Lukina Mishum Zerei B'Yamtiv. Let him also get Malchus because he's being Zerei B'Yamtiv. In other words, we only had that he's plowing on Yamtiv, right? What was the case? So he's getting hit for plowing on Yamtiv. So why not also? What's the question over here? Not why not also Zerei on Yamtiv? Right? We just established from Yanai that plowing, covering over dirt is also Zereya, so we should get. Yeah, so you should get for Zerei and Chayrish Amalei Tanakatani Shmaina. I'm sorry, Amalei Tana V'Shayir and if you should get Malchus, but Tana V'Shayir Amalei. That doesn't make any sense. Tanakatani Shmaina At Ami Tana V'Shayir. He says specifically 8. He says it's only 8. So what do you tell me that he said 8 and he really means 9? No, that's not what it is. Yeshchiluk Malchus b'Shabbos, Malchus b'Shabbos, Malachas b'Shabbos, Echiluk Malachas b'Yamtiv. By Shabbos we have this. We have a. It says by Habara, it's v'yotza eish lechalik, and that every single lab you get another cloud. The pasuk says the only thing the pasuk says really is not to do. All the other labim I don't think are written out in the Torah. It just says I think it just says you shouldn't do malacha, and we learn out all the malachas from the Mishkan. It doesn't say them specifically. The fact that it only says eish teaches us that each one is separate, is a separate isser, and it's not just one koil of. Don't do malacha. And if I do everything if I plant and sow and reap and bake and fire and everything, it's just one clap. So, but we don't have that Joshua by Yom Tif. So by Yom Tif, so again, the Shabbos, if I do one thing and I do multiple labs, so if I turn on one fire and I put the chant on the fire before, and I turn on the fire, I do one Maisa. I could be over two labs. I got over the lab of Bishul and lab of Avara, right? And so there's two lab. By Yom Tov, I don't have this Joshua. So Yom Tov, if I do one Maisa, it's only one lab. Amalei Adate, as we would say, touche. He got you're in Echanami. He concedes to his point. You say he's asking, do you not do chiluk malachas Yom Tov? So here's another one of these stacking lavim case. And the Vashal get someone who cooks a giranasha b'chala b'yam tov v'achloi like a chamish. The Gemara is going to disseminate them, delineate them now. Like him misham eichel get, he had a giranasha. But like him misham mavashal b'yam tov, he's mavashal on yam tov shloi l'tzarech. So even though bishul is mutar yam tov, it's only l'tzarech. If I cook for a guy, I cook for a dog. It's not. I think even for a dog might be questionable. But if I cook food that's for sure not needed for Shabbos, I cook food on Shabbos, on Yom Tov for next Shabbos, or whatever, that's aser. So something that's aser, a giranasha, you can't say it's a tzarech Yom Tov because you're not allowed to eat it. So again, like a mishum mavashal, go back. Like a mishum echagay, like a mishum mavashal Yom Tov shlo tzarech, like a mishum mavashal gib b'chalav. Now I have basar b'chalav that I cooked it. Like a mishum eichel basar b'chalav, I ate basar b'chalav. Like a mishum havara, and he built the fire, even though the Gemara doesn't say that. I guess it's assumed that he didn't have a working fire ready. The Misa Mishum Havara, the Misa, and if you're right, that what? That you ain chiluk, the ain chiluk malachas b'yamtiv, then the one Misa that I did should be Havara and Bishul. Everything more like Mishum Havara Mechayev, everything more the Chayev le Mishum, the Mechayev le Mishum Bishul. That right? Why should you don't? If you say ain chiluk. If you say ein chiluk malachas by Yom Tov, then the guy shouldn't get malachas for bishul and for havara. It should be one or the other. Gemara apik havara v'ayil get a nasha shel nevela. So throw in that it's a nevela and not that he did havara. He's not going to get for havara whether he did or he didn't. It doesn't matter because it's one ma'isa. I don't know why. If you do the havara and then you put on the food, it should be two separate ma'isas. I don't know why you wouldn't get two malachas for that. But it could be that we didn't say that he did two ma'isas. Okay, it could be that the havara is not on the fire. It could be the havara you could do. I'm not really sure I understand that. if I do two separate mice, and everyone holds if I do if someone does two, maybe it's behalam echa, so it's not. It's okay. Okay, I'm not 100% sure. But the Gemara answered apik havara va'ayol get an ashashal nevela. So now throw in that there's also nevela here. For the Gemara, it doesn't really work. Why? There's three problems of bishul and two problems of achila there. Now, if you're going to put in the isa shala, the isa, and if you're going to put in if you're going to make this an avela issue, you're going to have nevela, gid, and basav chala. That's three on the eating. Say that it's now he didn't do havara, but he used the atzei ashera, which is asibana. Atzei ashera is an ashera tree that it's a plant of avodah zara. You have to uproot it and burn it, but you can't have any enough from it. So say that he did it, but Isra enough. So again, now we're back to a bishul issue, and that's 3 and 2, and now we're good. And the hazara of burning an ashera tree is as follows: and don't retain anything in your hand from the Asherah tree. If you're going to say that it's a Asherah tree, you have another problem because there's a separate issue of using something for Avodah Zarah. There's another lab, so you shouldn't have 5; you should have 6. No, don't say it's an Asherah tree. Say that it's a hektish tree. Now, I don't think you can be marked to something that's still attached to the ground. I think that's a sugya. If I remember in. Probably Zvachim, but regardless whether you could or you can't, it could be that he designated detached wood. You should burn that Asherah tree, but don't burn my trees. Don't burn the trees that are muktish. So that is the maskana. The maskana is that we're going to amend our brisa of 5 lavim cooking incident to using hektish wood. That's from a gira nasha with milk on Yom Tif, and we're going to get 5 lavim by cooking, and by we're going to get 5 lavim of hektish, cooking gira nasha. Cooking basav chalav, eating gira nasha, eating basav chalav, and cooking on Yom Tif shloyat tzaref. Okay, zot gemara weiter. We're going to say a siman of Shanbai Shanaz, which is going to be the next 8 Amoraim that are going to try to stack lavim into our Mishnah. Say that it's also plowing in Nachal Eisan, and which Nachal Eisan is a place where they did the Eglah Rufa when they had somebody who dropped dead in the middle of the road and they didn't know which town he came from. Well, he was murdered. He didn't drop dead. He was murdered on the road, and we didn't know which town he came from. And the town that was closest is assumed liability, and they have to bring this Eglah Rufa, and it's a whole procedure founded and Deslaita Balinu L'Taiva. And so that place where they do this procedure is Nachal Eisan, and you're not allowed to plow there. You cannot go over there, you can't work the land, and you can't plow there, and you can't plant there. I say that you put a banner with Hashem's name on it, or put sticks in the form of Hashem's name, and when you plow over it, you're being moichek Hashem's name, which how we know it's aser and this is talking about when you conquer the Zayin Umas of Eretz Canaan, you should destroy their avodah and destroy their names. It's a law as a hazara not to destroy Hashem's name. Somebody while they're plowing is going to take off his tzaras, which is an iser. You shouldn't. I'm not really. I don't fully understand. You could do a lot of lavim. You could do a lot of lavim over here. I'm not sure if the plow is taking off that ephod or he's going to just loosen it while he's doing it. It's a little bit hard to. I'm not sure I understand exactly what the question is here, but we don't really answer these. We just let them slide. It's either we're like silently mask him or okay. You're using wood of Asherah as in your plow, which is aser. We just said you can't have any enough of it. I'm sorry. While you're going, you're chopping down fruit trees, which is the Isra, that's the Isra of Atashvas of You shouldn't chop down good fruit trees. Amalei Rav Zeira, and this is the only one we have a problem with for some reason. Amalei Rav Zeira, the Ramani V'Lachshinami can go into Amar Shvur Shloi Echarosh B'Yamtiv. He makes sure that I'm not going to plow on Yamtiv, and now that he's plowing on Yamtiv, he's over a second law for plowing because he's over on his nether, on his shua. Hasam like Kachala Shua. Why? Because Mushba V'Ayim Narasinayu. We're coming up to Shua soon, when we're up to Pesach still, but we're almost up to Shua. It's almost up to counting the Aimer, and we're at Har Sinai. We were Mushba V'Ayim. We swore to take except in Tai Sefer Torah. So somebody who makes a Shua not to wear tefillin or anything like that, his shua is not Mekayim. Whether he gets malchus or not for making a stupid shua like that, or a useless or a baseless or a needless shua, that might be a separate issue. But it doesn't ask us, he doesn't have to go she'elis chacham, Rabbi, can I put on tefillin today? I said I'm not going to put on tefillin. So the fact that he's not, his tefillin doesn't come asar, and if he says these tefillin are asar to me, that might be a separate issue. But that's not what we're learning now. But shvuas. But he makes a shua on Yom Tov. Yom Tov is not he doesn't have to say anything in order to be. His shua is not chal on Yom Tov because he's already mushba on Yom Tov. Going to shua Yom Tov. So in this kasha, we're going to learn that if his shua falls out, and he says his shua on about the chos, he says, I'm never going to plow. Someone says, I'm making a shua, I'm never going to plow. Say the week they say on Yom Tov. So the miga the chol alei the shua b'chol alei the miga nam b'Yom Tov. So that the shua is chal because it's chal on Shabbos. So too it's chal during the week. So it's chal on Yom Tov. And we're not saying Yisurim that you could upfrag with a she'elis chacham. If you don't have a light, that's what do you mean? What do you mean? We have a few other ones that are very hektish. You said you're playing with two hektish animals. You could be shiloh hektish. You could say, "Oh, I'm going to make this cow hektish," and then you could say, "Oh, I'm going to chap and she'elis chacham and go on freya." If you have b'char is kaddish merechem. There's nothing. No one asked you. No matter what you say to the chacham, it's still going to be kaddish. And then we have a nazir. It says that is a nazir. So in nazir also you could do she'el on your naziris. And remember, Nazir Shimshon doesn't have this ability to be mashal chacham. In fact, I have a problem with that. Nazir Shimshon, is it a problem that is mitam the mason? We know. It's also, I think, in Saita. The whole story of Shimshon Agiba is in Saita. That Shimshon was allowed to mitam the mason. You see, Beferish, he killed all the plishtim, and even though a guy is not mitam the oil, but a guy is mitam the maga. So he killed thousands of plishtim, and he was allowed to do that. So that's how you see the Gemara is medayik. That's how you know. But you see that the Gemara names on David Pasha that a Nazir Shimshon is allowed to be mitam the mason. So you just listed as a Nazir in plowing and a basic cars as one of these surim. So that would affect that issur. The Gemara Ella Haitana Issachar Leslie. He's not dealing with this whole issue of Issachar, which is the only way that you're going to get your Isser to work, your Shua to work, is going to be an Issachar issue, and that's we're not talking about. Amar Hoshia Hamarvia Shar Psuli Hamakdashes Loikishtayin. If somebody is Marvia, somebody mates a Shar Psuli Hamakdashes, he gets two Isurim. What's the Isurim? The first one's simple. It's hektish. You work an animal, even mate an animal, that's hektish. And the other issue is an issue of client, because even though it's not a different min physically, but because it's hektish, you cannot mate it with another animal that's considered a client. Even with another animal in its own hektish status would be an issue of client. Like even if you're manig a shab psulim because it's also client in and of itself, it's also client. So if you're manig it, you're over isser of being manig client animals in client. It's even you either client with one animal. So you would also be chayiv two makkos over there. Look at the Mishnah. Kama Malkin, I say, how many times do you get patched? This is what we're waiting for, right? We're in Makkos, and it's the first time we're actually talking about what happens during Makkos, during the Makkos. Kama Malkin, I say, how many Makkos do you give him? 40 minus 1 shenam mispar. We learn out that it's not arba'am mamash, it's close to 40, which is 39. If you don't have arba'am shleimus 39, 40 full Makkos, who like it, as how you say ben Now, Okay, I think we should do this tomorrow. Already 45 minutes in, come on. Okay, we'll start from the mission tomorrow, as Hashem. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.